What's up guys, welcome back to another Gwent video. And in today's video, we're going to be looking at the monster reveals that were revealed yesterday and today. If you guys missed out my previous 4 videos, I covered the Scoia'tael, Nilfgaard Syndicate, and Skellige reveals. My favorite reveals being so far the Skellige ones. I think the Skellige cards are phenomenal. I love their designs, and I'm so excited to play this archetype. But today, it's monsters. Give in to the sin of gluttony and join the dark reveries with other sisters. Now, before I jump into this, I want to quickly mention that when it comes to these particular monster reveals, I'm going to judge them not in a vacuum, but together. Because these cards are actually quite synergistic and seem to be quite bad outside of any synergies with them. Like, a lot of these cards, in my opinion, aren't very good at all if you don't play them with any synergy, right? It's these cards, what I mean to say is these cards in a mid-range deck, in a mid-range monster deck, would suck. Simple as that. You'll understand when I start looking at them. Alright, first up is Incubus, a 5 strength, 5 provision card, a rare card by the way, and he's a relict. Deploy, summon a bronze unit from your opponent's graveyard to the opposite row, then summon a bronze unit of equal or less provisions from your graveyard to this row. Women exist to be worshipped. Damn, I can already see the jokes made for this guy. Alright, so the way this card works is you play him on the board and you summon, let's say, your opponent's Elven Swordmaster from their graveyard. You're going up against Scoia'tael, obviously. Elven Swordmaster is 4 provisions, which means from your graveyard you'll only be able to summon a 4P card. So that includes Necker, Timor Worker. Let's just quickly jump to the 4P cards here. Units, there we go. So all these cards can be summoned if it's a 4P card, right? Some of them are pretty good. Kikimor Worker is not bad at all. Some of them would be pretty bad to summon, like, for example, Wild Hunt Warrior, because it has a deploy effect. You want to summon things that don't have deploy effects, right? But that's how the card works. If you summon, let's say, a 6P card like a Great Sword, which is a bad idea by the way, because a Great Sword would come out at 10 strength, you would get to choose between 4, 5, and 6. But only bronzes though, so keep in mind, it's only bronzes, right? So you get to choose a Self-Eater, a Barbigazi, an Ancient Foglet, a Larva, and so on and so forth. That's how the card works. Not going to judge it just yet because it actually has some very interesting synergies with the other cards in this reveal. The next one is our common card, the Lesser Witch, a 5 strength, 4 provision card, another relict. Deploy, spawn a base copy of self in your graveyard. Okay. Bonded, spawn a base copy of self on this row instead. Less powerful, but no less terrible. So another bonded card, which means it has synergy with Mushy Truffle, the neutral card we saw on when I talked about the Scoia'tael reveals. Again, this card is pretty hard to judge on its own, but it's got a decent bonded effect, right? If the first card plays as a 5, but if it lives, the second one comes down as 10 points, right? For 4 provisions. So it's not bad at all. It gives you multiple bodies, which is a good thing for Morntard. All of them are relics, so you get easy relic pockets. You buff your Self-Eaters. Not bad at all, right? But the synergy you'll see when we come to Yaga and Witch's Sabbath as well. Anyway, the epic card is Witch's Sabbath. It's an organic card with an insane artwork, by the way. 10 provisions. Summon up to 3 highest power units from your opponent's graveyard to an enemy row. Then summon as many highest power monster units from your graveyard to the opposite row and give them doomed. For the Sabbath, at least 3 witches are required. With 2, it's only a quarrel. So this card, the way it works is if your opponent has 6 units in their graveyard and you play this, the card will automatically choose the highest 3 power cards and yoink them to whatever row you choose. And then from your graveyard, the highest 3 units will be yoinked out to the same row. Simple as that. So again, if you're going up against Skellige and they have, let's say, 2 Great Swords and a Bear Witcher in their graveyard, then those 3 cards will be pulled. And then from your graveyard, if you have She Who Knows, Old Spear Tip, and Goliath, then those 3 cards will be summoned. You don't have a choice on what cards they are, but you have a choice on what row it is. Might not be obvious what the synergies here, but we'll see later on. And finally, our legendary card, another 13 provision drop for this expansion, is Yaga. Obviously a reference to Baba Yaga. A relict, 1 strength, 13 provisions. Deploy Sabbath, Din Seal. Order, consume a 4 provision unit, then increase the provision value by 1, cooldown 2. The Witch Queen sat upon her throne of bones. Ooh, it's Savathûn. If you guys play Destiny 2, you know what I mean by this. Gorging herself on all and sucking the life out of everything that came her way. For centuries, she feasted until one day she could no longer stand at all. And so she ate some more. This card is really cool. I love the artwork, I love the effect, but is it actually good? Let's talk about synergies now. So first of all, let's talk about Yaga. Yaga on it might seem like a strong card because you can consume any unit, starting with 4 provision. This card actually reminds me of, if you guys remember, Artifact. What is it? No, yeah, this one right here, Sihil. It's quite similar to Sihil, right? It had another cooldown too, except this one is damage instead of provisions, right? Your damage goes up by 1. But it's another very similar effect. In this case here, you play this. You want to make sure you play it with Sabbath, otherwise you will not get the Zeal, which means that this thing is going to die because it's only 1 strength, unless it's behind a defender, right? But even then, it's not safe because a Lacerate will kill it immediately, or Rain, Unlucky Rain, or a Storm, you know? Be careful about this. So once you get the Zeal, you consume something that is 4 provisions, either on your side or on your opponent's side. So for example, Elven Swordmaster is 4 provisions, you consume it. That's really good. You obviously want to consume stuff that is on your opponent's side because you gain double value, right? You gain the points and they lose the points. Also keep in mind, if it's boosted, doesn't matter. If it's still 4 provisions, you're going to be able to use it. So if their Elven Swordmaster got boosted by Tactile Advantage, for example, and is now 9 strength, Yaga can consume 9 strength, it'll go immediately to 10, and that's a lot of value right there. So that seems really powerful. And then 2 turns later, you have to now consume something that is 5 provisions. Now, the wording suggests that you cannot consume something that is lower. So for example, if once you're on 5 provisions, you can't consume another 4 provision. It has to be a 5 provision card. Likewise, if you go to 6, it has to be a 6 provision card. In this vein, it's similar to Ruhin. Sorry, not Ruhin. Rience. I don't know, let me just leave this. In that vein, it's similar to Rience because Rience is limited to the card you banish from your deck, right? So if you banish a 7 strength card, you must destroy a 7 strength unit. If you don't have a target, too bad. So that can be a little limiting. That can mean it can be a little clunky, and the sequencing is very important with this card, right? So Yaga on its own, pretty decent card, but it's very susceptible to locks. It's only 1 strength, so it's like a Morntart, except Morntart has armor. This doesn't even have armor. You can protect it with Carapace, the monster leader ability, because you can Carapace, you can boost it by 3, and you can give it Veil as well. You can also boost it again by 3 if you use another leader charge to get it to 7. Not a bad idea. At least it prevents it from being locked in poison, right? But it still is a heatwave target. It still is going to be a very primary, a very focal target to destroy, because obviously if it's left unchecked, it's a lot of points. Keep that in mind. So I'm not going to give it a score just yet. I'll do all that in the end, because again, very synergistic cards, because now we come to Incubus. This is where you can start to see the synergies, right? So let's say you want to play Yaga in this round, but you don't have a 4 provision target on your opponent's side. Well, Incubus comes on the board and says, hey look, I can summon a 4P card from my opponent's graveyard. Let's take Squirtle again, Elven Swordmaster. And I can also summon a 4P card from my graveyard, which is the Lesser Witch, which coincidentally will spawn a base copy of self in your graveyard. Look at that. So now, with Incubus, you target a 4P card from your opponent, and then you yoink out your Lesser Witch, which is a relic by the way, so it gives you a pocket for Gankian if you need it. And it helps you with your Sabbath, obviously, because this thing is coming, it's being yoinked out. And now you can then consume with Yaga your opponent's 4P card. There you go, synergy right there. Oh, you need a 5P card? Well, again, you can use Incubus. Instead of choosing a 4P card, you can yoink out, what's a 5P card in Squirtle? Dolbathana Sorceress, or Whisper Dolbathana, or Elven Seer. Yoink that out, and then you yoink a 5P card from your graveyard. If you're playing relics, you have Gankian, you have Witch Apprentice, you have some decent targets. So now you can see the synergy between Incubus and Yaga and Lesser Witch, right? Pretty good stuff. What about Witch's Sabbath now? This is interesting, right? Summon up to 3 highest power units from your opponent's graveyard to an enemy row, then summon as many highest power monster units from your graveyard to your own row and give them Doom. So it's basically a mass resurrect, but you're only giving Doom to your units, by the way. You're not giving Doom to your opponent's units. Keep that in mind. This card is a little iffy to judge because it's a very matchup dependent card. Against Squirtle or NR, they typically don't have very tall units. NR does have some like Falabor and Gerhardt at 7. But if you look at the average Squirtle power level, right? Let's go to Squirtle real quick. Let's just look at Squirtle, okay? Let's go to ST. And let's look at units, right? So if you look at the average strength, we have an 8, we have a couple of 6s. But you're seeing a common number, 5 4s. 6, 5 4 6 is that number we're seeing. So a lot of 5s here, a lot of 5s, a lot of 4s. So if you look at the Squirtle typical cards, the tallest they can get is 8, which is only 1 unit, which is the Great Oak, and Synthesis. They have only 2 8 provision cards. Both cards you don't see much. What cards are we seeing right now? That are actually tall. I would say Eldain. Where's Eldain? Yeah, 6 strength in a unitless deck. But on average, when you play this card, you're probably going to young card a couple of 5s and maybe a 4 from your opponent's graveyard. But as a monster player, you obviously have access to some really powerful cards, right? Monster unit. You have stuff like She Who Knows, 10 strength. Keltullus, ooh, that's pretty good. Old Spear Tip. You have stuff like Bloody Mistress. You have Igorn is actually really bad because once you summon him, he'll get destroyed immediately since he won't get the armor. So Igorn is bad. Keep that in mind. But you have stuff like Old Spirit of Asleep, you have Defender, you can res your maybe a Miruna if she's one of the stronger ones. You know, you got some good stuff. Goliath is another really tall one. But ignore the golds, you also have some tall bronzes. You have Griffins. You have stuff like Enel Conquerors. You know, there's some decent options here. So I think that's pretty significant. But the thing is, I'm finding it hard to see why this would be synergistic with these 3 cards, because Yaga is typically going to be at 4 to 5 provisions when it needs then it needs to consume a 4p/5p card, right? Witch's Sabbath is going to yoink out some really expensive stuff. I would expect it to, at least. Somewhere around the 7 to 8 provision range. So I'm not sure how Witch's Sabbath is going to be useful in this case. Witch's Sabbath can be used if you're running She Who Knows, then Witch's Sabbath is actually pretty good because it allows you to potentially get carryover twice. You play She Who Knows in round 1, and then you play this in round 2, and if your She Who Knows is one of the tall units, she comes out again, right? And if you have Sabbath, well, that's more carryover. I think this is the hardest card to judge, if I'm being honest. It's a very tricky card to say if it's good or not. Very matchup dependent, very meta dependent as well. If if your opponents aren't playing tall units, it's not good, right? And also, what if you res something that your opponent can use? Like, if you're going with Syndicate, what if you res their summon their Tunnel Drill again? Tunnel Drill has 5 strength. Syndicate doesn't really have tall units, so there's a good chance you actually yoink out a Tunnel Drill for them to use against you. So you have to be quite careful here. So yeah, I think that when it comes to this monster set we've seen, I think these cards are very interesting. A lot of potential, but very, very synergistic. And for this reason, I don't think these cards are going to see too much play once people are finished experimenting with them. Simply because of how reliant they are on each other, right? Like, if you look at them in a vacuum, Incubus seems pretty bad, if I'm being honest. Like, yes, you can get a Witch Apprentice out, but you're also giving your opponent a 5p card back, right? Lesser Witch is probably the more consistent one. It's a decent card, I would say. It's not terrible. It plays the same value as Succubus, is it? Yeah, it's a Succubus, except cheaper, right? It's another setup card. Both are 5 strength. This one has potential, a really cool effect with Death Wish, where it becomes a Ruin at Adrenaline 3, which is not bad at all. Are you going to run Lesser Witch in a Relic deck? I am not sure. It procs your Thrives, for example, which is pretty good. Just took some water, 1 second. But yeah, I think it's a very weird card to judge. I think Yaga is also another difficult card. I would say Yaga in a vacuum is a terrible card. It goes in the way of Morntart, requires support. But once it goes off, right, it is insanely good, right? If your opponent cannot control this, yeah, then you're winning at that point, easily. So I would give Yaga 3 out of 5. I think that's what I'm going to give it. I know last time when I reviewed Mamuna, I gave it a 3 out of 5, but that's because I was stupid. Mamuna is a 10 out of 5 card. But Yaga, I don't think is as good. I think Yaga, honestly, is an average card. Maybe even a below average card. Very dependent on other effects going off. Very dependent on your opponent not having control or having used their control so that this thing can, survive. You also need to play this on Sabbath because you don't want to play this without Sabbath because otherwise it's just a 1 strength graveyard unit because your opponent will just kill it immediately. So I think it's a 2.5 out of 5. I think it's just average. Insane artwork though. Kudos to the artwork. Lesser Witch, I would give it a 3 out of 5. I think it's more consistent than Yaga. I think it's a decent card. I think the bond effect actually is pretty strong. A 10-4-4 on the second card is pretty useful. And you know, obviously it has, and then Incubus, I think is another 2.5 out of 5 card. I think this is also a very average card. It might even actually be underperforming unless you have these 3 cards in particular. Again, the order you want is you play Lesser Witch, then you play Incubus, and then you play Yaga on Sabbath. You consume the 4P card you summon with Incubus, and then you hope you have a 5P card unit somewhere on the board so you can keep getting Yaga value, right? And then Witch's Sabbath again, very difficult. I don't think I can actually give this a score. This is the first time I'm going to say a card I cannot judge. I think this is a very interesting card. I love the effect. It gives me very Thronebreaker vibes. If you guys haven't played Thronebreaker, you probably won't get it. But in Thronebreaker, there were some really interesting effects. Because that was a single-player game, they were allowed to be a bit more, I would say, creative when it comes to what kind of effects they want. But it's good to see that Gwent is getting these kind of cards. I think it's good to see these kind of designs. I think there's some really interesting stuff you can do here. I just feel like Witch's Sabbath is a very conditional card again, but like super conditional. It's also quite expensive at 10p. Yeah, that's my. I honestly I can't give a score to this card. I know you guys maybe in your head maybe you're seeing some really obvious stuff, but it's very difficult to say, right? But it's interesting, right? Another faction that has graveyard support, like now that makes it Nilfgaard, Skellige obviously, and now monsters. Interesting. Like, where's my boy? Where's my boy Lemons? Like this guy's just like gonna have a field day. This guy's gonna love it. I mean, something you could do with Witch's Sabbath is you could probably break your opponent's Mamuna if you yoink out their tallest units, which is typically what Mamuna wants to consume, right? Maybe there's something you do there. I don't know. You could break their Hjalmars. You could break their... I don't know. It's just difficult to say. So yeah. I think finally I'm going to say Incubus is a 2.5. Lesser Witch is a 3. Yaga's a 2.5. This is really difficult to say how good it is, honestly. Probably my most inconclusive video when it comes to these cards, but I think these cards overall are not going to see as much play as people are expecting them to be. I expect people will experiment with them in the first week, but are going to quickly figure out that the combo is too combo dependent to actually be worth running, to be worth it, in my opinion. If you're going to run a Relic deck, I think the Relic deck we played during 9.2 is the way to go. And I think at that point that's also not as good. I think Koschei is a better, probably the most consistent monster deck to play, or even White Frost. One thing though, Yaga is actually not bad in a Deathwish deck. Because you can consume a unit on your side of the board. You have a bit more control there, right? Because if you need to consume a 5p Deathwish unit, well, you have some stuff, right? Let's look at Deathwish. You have, yeah, you have Harpy Egg, you have Rotfiend, you have Succubus. At 6p, what do we have? At 6p, we have, oh, 6p is terrible. Really? Okay, 6p is not the best, but 7p, you have Manticore, you have Penitent, you know, decent. Werecat is also good. At 4p, you have a lot of options. You have stuff like Entrega Eggs, you have Arcuspore, you have Foglet. Not bad at all. So in a Deathwish deck, maybe you run Yaga. But there we go, guys. I don't have much thoughts about this. I don't want to stretch this video longer than it needs to be. I'd love to hear your thoughts on this because I definitely think you guys might have better thoughts. Hopefully. I'm really hoping you guys maybe are will let me know of some missing combo that that I'm not seeing right now. But there you go, guys. Those are the monster reveals. Again, this is probably the most inconclusive video I've made when it comes to reveals so far. But today is Saturday morning when I'm recording this video. So the weekends we don't get any reveals usually. So Northern Realms, I think the way it's going to work is Northern Realms 2 cards will be revealed on Monday. And then on Tuesday, I believe we will get a video from CDPR where they'll reveal the remaining 2 Northern Realm cards and the remaining neutral card as well. I think that's what they said. So expect a video on Tuesday then for the final 5 cards being revealed. So, hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you guys did, please do show your support below. And I'll see you guys next time. Take care.